Evening, folks. Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another Legacy stream. This was not the stream that I was intending on doing today. Um, Card Hoarder is doing some maintenance on their bots right now, and their bots are currently in process of coming back online. And I wanted to either start my stream more or less on time or just delay the stream until, Wednesday or something like that. And so I posted in the Discord and asked what people wanted to see, and they said that me running back the Chandra list from the weekend was totally fine. So we're going to play another 4x Chandra Awakened Inferno Stompy deck list without making any changes. At the end of the last stream, I did discuss some potential changes that I would make to the deck list. Again, we are not going to make any of those changes today because I'm not borrowing any new cards, so we're just going to run back the exact same thing that we played before. I believe I played it to a 3-2 finish that really felt like a 4-1. We got absolutely bullied by not Omen of the Sea, the 2-mana enchantment that makes a Kraken or an octopus after you've drawn 8 cards. That card completely bullied me and stole a win out from under our turn 2 best Planeswalker friend. So we're just going to jump into some Ominous Seas. Thank you, thank you. I keep mixing those two cards up because Omen of the Sea has been seeing play in the Yorian Miracles decks sometimes. So without any further ado, since we've already seen this deck list on stream, I'm just going to jump directly into games. I'm going to show off a couple of things. So this will be Thursday's deck list. There's no way to get this all on screen neatly and quickly. But we are going to play with a Yorian Enchantress deck list on Thursday. Then for Saturday, I believe that's when the Umori deck list is going to see played, which is just going to be like 100% creatures all the time goodness. And then I have a, not Lurrus, the Otter. I have an Otter deck list for next week, courtesy of Lomer Boy. That's pretty darn spicy. So we're going to have some really cool things on the channel in the coming weeks. I was somewhat surprised that we didn't get an announcement of an announcement today. Yeah, the Enchantress deck looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Like, we're going to get to do some disgusting things with Reality Acid in particular, which is one a lot of people probably don't know. But you end up using it to destroy your opponent's lands most of the time. Blue land destruction. Turns out it's a thing. I would like to play first. We're playing against a Lurrus deck. We have a turn 2 Blood Moon, followed by turn 3 Pyromancer. This is a medium minus hand, in my opinion. I believe that I'm going to keep it, but I'm not super stoked about this hand. I like that we can attempt Blood Moon 2 turns in a row. I don't like that if our Blood Moon gets countered and our city then gets destroyed, that life is super awkward for me. But the Pyromancer is going to give us some card selection to like loot away the cards that we can't play or don't want to play. Okay, cool. So we're very likely playing against a Delver variant based on this play pattern. Our hand's okay. in that we get to try back-to-back Blood Moons and hope that it works. But it's going to be pretty easy to punch a hole in our strategy. That's actually a very good draw. That draw is really interesting in that I could just play Mountain this turn and pass, then go turn... So I could set up to have turn 4 Chandra Awakened Inferno that's uncounterable. But I don't think it's correct to do that. I think I'm going to jam here. Like, my plan either way is going to be vulnerable to Wasteland. This will insulate me from Wasteland, and then I probably have endgame inevitability. Oh, pitching a Snapcaster Mage. So my opponent might be a little more mid-rangey than Delver. I don't know. It's so hard to tell these days because deck lists aren't super stock anymore. Like, there's so many decks that are just like Loris piles of cards that I want to be playing that it's rather difficult to super identify what deck you're on early. Yeah, like, if my opponent had basic lands, I would have expected them to fetch that on turn 1 after seeing Mountain, right? I'm gonna try to Moon again. If my opponent is Grixis, I might be cutting them. Well, like, my opponent is either like Grixis or Jeskai, so they could play this, right? Or potentially 4 or 5 color, who knows? So I'm potentially cutting them off a color by doing this. And this is just going to allow me to make stable land drops for the rest of the game and turn my cities into actual lands that I care about. Oh wow, another force. Okay. So now I'll just play Mountain, and then I'll go 4 mana next turn, 6 mana following turn, and resolve this. It kind of sucks that I have to just, like, throw away this land for no value. But it's probably the best way to advance my game plan. Yeah, so my guess is that my opponent is Grixis, given double polluted Delta here. There's been a decent amount of, like, Grixis K-command piles. Yeah, alright. Do not care about that card. I'm actually super happy with this draw, because it means that I don't need to, like, awkwardly play Seasoned Pyromancer this turn in order to make a play. I am just going to plus this card rather than take a card out of it in order to make my opponent more likely to spend resources answering this Karn. So by not minusing Karn's initial starting loyalty is 5, so if I minus it would go down to 2, and a lightning bolt would kill the Karn. So by not minusing, I keep Karn out of lightning bolt range, and also threaten a kill next turn. I don't think I want to go for Lattice Lock. I think I want to cast my other big scary Planeswalker. And just keep Karn's loyalty high. And we'll see what opponent can do with that. I'm going to have some very interesting lines available to me beginning with the next turn cycle in terms of my Karn and Planeswalkers. My opponent has used 2 Force of Wills already. I probably need to be thinking that they have 2-ish K commands. I need to be cognizant of Snapcaster Mage. And any Karn artifact that I get basically can be dealt with via K command. So it may be that I just kind of like slow roll this game a decent amount until my opponent taps out for mana, and then make a big play. Chandra's loyalty is at a very good number in that I can still do the -3 and keep it out of lightning bolt range. My opponent has just said, "Yay, I'm dumb." I'm not sure if that's because they just lost to Lattice Lock or because they played their Lurrus out into a Chandra Ultimate. Unclear. Oh, it was because of their bobble. I just put them to the test. I lose the Karn to Lightning Bolt. I probably should not put them to the test. No, I think I'm fine using what's on board here. Yeah, I think I'll play this, and then we'll just pass. We have a win condition in play. We could accelerate our win condition, but I'm fine with like forcing my opponent to deal with my board and then killing them. So opponent very much could have something like Drown in the lock here. In which case I have 4 cards in my graveyard. This is probably a turn where I'll go ahead and minus the Karn. That was quick. That makes me think that Lattice is going to resolve. All right, great. There we go. Yeah, so for anyone not familiar with this, the -3 deals 3 damage to each non-elemental creature token. Or sorry, to each non-elemental creature. So this will kill the Pyromancer, but the... Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Get out. Nope. But it makes elemental tokens, so it's not going to clean those up. Okay, so we are playing against some sort of controlling-ish, maybe slightly bigger than Delver Grixis deck that has at least 2 basic lands. I think I want this, and I probably want a couple extra answers to Luris. I'll only be making very slight adjustments to my game plan. I think my ensnaring bridges are going to be of medium power level. Like, my opponent's creatures aren't large, and I'm boarding in extra removal to deal with their creatures anyway. At the same time, if I'm planning on winning the game primarily via these and not with the combat step, I can see keeping them around. Trinisphere is slightly less effective on the draw, but probably still okay. It's just interesting because usually you're using Trinisphere to force through your Planeswalkers, but 4 of my Planeswalkers are already uncounterable and I can already force them through. I'm cutting some number of these 6 cards. The question is, like, the ratio. I think it's 2 and 1 in one direction or another, and I don't know which direction that's supposed to be. I'm going to try this and see how it feels. Oh, hell yeah. Ooh, that's very good. That's turn 2 Planeswalker. Very aggressive brainstorm there. Yeah, this hand is so much gas that it's... Oh, they did that during my main phase. Interesting. Like, this hand is so much gas that I might not even Chrome Mox the second Planeswalker to play a turn 2 Planeswalker, and I might just wait it out. Like, that's how much straight gas I have. Okay, that makes it easier. We will imprint that. I think. If I just play Mountain... No, okay, so I imprint this, I have 4 next turn. I only have 5 the following turn if Chandra Torch of Defiance doesn't resolve, but that's fine. Like, I'm good with the City of Traders sticking in play for quite some time. So the upside of going for the imprint here is that if one of the 2 Chandras resolves in the next 2 turn cycles, we get guaranteed 6 mana Chandra the following turn, which is very strong. The downside of imprinting here is if my Mox gets destroyed, the rest of my hand becomes very awkward. Did not expect to see Wasteland from this deck. Kinda MTG, thank you very much for your continued support. Very much appreciated. Hope you are enjoying the content. It's going well. Okay, yeah, so this was the scenario in which I did not want to imprint. The scenario where they had K command. But that's okay. When I get to 4 mana, I want to cast this. And on the off chance that it takes a few turns for me to get to 4 mana, I want to have an answer to their Lurrus when they play it. JK. We go now. Okay, yeah, but it can't be played. Yes, Woody, I played a league or 2 with it. I don't actually think it's all that impressive, if I'm being honest. I think the deck list has severe problems against anything that's like Tarmogoyf sized or bigger. Actually, no. Let's go with like Sarah Avenger sized or bigger. Just like creatures are problematic if your opponent can play them. Okay, we're in my upkeep because of the bobble trigger. So we're just going to take mana here. Alright, opponent has 2 planeswalkers with high loyalty that both defend themselves to deal with, plus I have a removal spell in hand. That's definitely a tricky spot for them. So my opponent will know whatever my next draw step is. They knew about the mountain that I drew on my turn. Baleful Strix isn't a realistic clock for either one of these planeswalkers. It can keep small Chandra at bay, but the big one ticks up for 2 each time. I'm also not super expecting something like Hydroblast. That's the sort of card that's going to take to beat me. Like Hydroblast, Snapcaster Hydroblast, or something of that ilk is pretty brutal. So we'll play this, we'll plus this one first, see what's on top of the library. A Chalice of the Void. That is interesting. Is Chalice of the Void better than damage? My opponent's going to be at 10 at the start of their turn. So the thing is that if my opponent has... okay, they're just done. I'm going to keep talking about this spot because I think this spot is like really interesting. If Hydroblast is my opponent's primary out to beat me, and casting this Chalice works towards that, works towards stopping that, it's a really good play. But I don't really care if they spend their resources cantripping, because their time spent cantripping is time that they're not dealing with the board. And my board kills them very quickly. So it's 4 this turn, followed by 5 the following turn, followed by dead. So they're on a 3-turn clock. Chalice of the Void stopping Hydroblast is pretty good, but if they have a Snapcaster Mage, then casting the Chalice is actually pretty bad, right? So then they get the mode of like Snapcaster, destroy the Chalice, deal 2 to a Planeswalker, attack a Planeswalker to 3. And I've made one of their cards that was just going to be like kind of medium into a good card. And so like there's a real question of whether or not 2 damage directly to my opponent's dome here is better than the Chalice of the Void. Yeah, so like really interesting spot. The life total stuff is particularly interesting as well, since my opponent has like Lurrus. So Lurrus plus Bobble means they can cash in at least 1 extra card a turn, unless I like dealt with either the Lurrus or the Bobble. I had 2 different things in play and 1 thing in hand that answered Lurrus, so like that part of the equation isn't like getting factored in all that much this time, but it's food for thought. But yeah, this was kind of why I wanted to play with this card. Like, this card is so sweet. Coming down early off of Grim Monolith is super spooky as well. Like, you get a decent number of ways of draws that can turn to this thing if you're playing Grim Monolith. So normally you can turn 1 Planeswalkers on, like, turn 1 4-drop on some God hands and turn 2 4-drop pretty easily. So turn 2 4-drop like happens with Chrome Mox, 1 Mountain, 1 Soul Land. Or like Mox and Spirit Guide are same thing for that math. Alright, so we're on the play with turn 1 Chalice against a Lurrus deck. That's fine. Wasteland is going to be super spooky with this hand, though. Ooh, Verdant Catacombs, Lurrus. Not Delver. Well, I shouldn't say that. We could be playing against a bug variant instead. We also could be playing against something spicy like, say, a Lurrus Dark Depths deck. Swamp, huh? Ha! I called it! Oh man, that's my win condition. I lied. I think we're going to kill it. And then I think I'm going to Chalice on 0, despite the fact that Chrome Mox is an excellent, excellent draw for me right now. Actually, do I kill it in the face of Lurrus just coming back? As soon as I hit another red land, I have a removal spell for Lurrus. I don't want... this is weird. It's hard for my opponent to get to 5 mana to play Lurrus and Bob in the same turn cycle. So what I think I'm going to do is go ahead and kill the Bob. And then I'm going to play a Chalice on 0. Putting the Chalice on 0 here means that my opponent can't cast Lurrus and then get immediate value out of it by rebuying the Lotus Petal that they used to cast Lurrus. Another Babo. Land? I need to stick this Planeswalker so that I can stop tapping my Ancient Tomb. Dark Ritual. I respect it. So this is probably Lurrus plus second Bob from the graveyard. Thank you very much for following. Yeah, I know, it's weird. There are some people that I've watched on Twitch, like, all the time, that I'm like, oh, I'm not actually following you. Okay, so playing the Mox plus a Planeswalker means that I go down to 2 cards in hand. Shit. Nope. Chalice on 0 counters my Mox. Okay, so I'm going to take 7. Yikes. Okay, do I have outs? I need to draw a... Alright, if I draw red land next turn, I can play my Planeswalker, play my Mox, go down to 2 cards in hand, and then die 2 board. Because it takes 7, go to 2 for Ancient Tomb, kill 1 Bob. I guess my out would involve Chandra plus and get cards out of my hand? Nope, that doesn't work. Alright, regardless, I'm going to pass the turn here. See if we get a little extra information from my opponent's Bobs. Yeah, I don't think all of Twitch's functionality is perfect by any means. So, like, there's a lot of times where you don't necessarily get notifications when someone, like, follows. So, like, for example, I didn't have my stream manager up, so I didn't see, right? I didn't see that veritable CVN had followed until they said something in chat, right? And similarly, there's times... Well, if we drew the red land, we would go down to enough cards so that, like, Loris wouldn't attack in. But I can't Chrome Mox due to the Chalice of Void on 0 that I played to play around them getting value out of their Lotus Petal. So, like, that definitely bit me in the butt. Sudden Shock is going to be good against my opponent. Sorcerer Spyglass is okay against our opponent. There's worlds where we name a Bobble, and then the rest of the time we name part of the Dark Depths package. And when I think about this, and I think I'm going to want to leave 1 bridge in the board to Karn for it. So historically versus the Depths deck, I board out my Trinispheres because they can just kill you without playing any spells off of just, like, Thespian Stage Dark Depths. But seeing as my opponent is a Dark Ritual Bauble deck as well, that changes the math a decent amount. I don't think this season Pyromancer is necessarily going to be great. And I'm still on the fence about the Trinispheres. So if I think about how this game is going to play out, I think I'm playing a control role rather than a prison role. Like, I have 7 removal spells not attached to my Planeswalkers. And Trinisphere doesn't... It contributes to the prison role rather than the control role in a lot of different ways. I don't know. It's also possible that Chalice of the Void is only of medium power level. I don't know, like Chalice on 0 and 1 both seem like they do things. Unsure. Maybe I'm going too deep in boarding in the fourth of those. Let's try this without Trinispheres and see how it feels. Obviously, I haven't played against this variant before. And I also don't really know what my opponent is going to have out of their sideboard. You've convinced me. We can do this. All right. So, I know you all know what Luris does. I'm going to read the companion text to you, okay? Each permanent card in your starting deck has CMC 2 or less. So I am probably going to lose this game if my opponent Force of Virtues me. But if they don't Force of Virtue me, I think I win this game pretty handily. I think Sudden Shock's pretty good in the format right now. It doesn't answer everything, but, like, the red spells don't get the luxury of answering everything, right? So, like, things like Sudden Shock and Abrade don't get to answer threats like Tarmogoyf. But an uncounterable instant speed answer to Luris seems pretty good in the format right now. So again, Force of Vigor absolutely beats us this game. Also, just saying, if my opponent gets to play a Luris and I get to Sudden Shock it, it's pretty sick. All right, good name from my opponent there, I think. I'm just going to keep this available as a mana source. So I'm not planning on winning the game via Ensnaring Bridge beats. I'm not planning on winning the game with beats due to Ensnaring Bridge. So I'm not going to play out the Spirit Guide. I'm going to save it to help me cast a 6-mana Chandra if I draw one. It could be incoming Force of Virtue, or it could just be my opponent has stepped away from their computer. If they have Force of Virtue, I 100% do not think they cast it until end step. Honestly, I don't even know if they cast it at all yet if they have it. I think you wait until you play a Dark Depths. Because then you just have, like, the free roll merit lodge that, like, I can't do anything about. It's possible I should have cast the Spirit Guide that turn. Sure. That's pretty good with Lurrus. Here I was thinking I didn't have to worry about Seal. Quite wrong. Sure. Oh, you would like to Thoughtseize me, hey? So I'm going to lose the Sudden Shock here either way. So I can take the Spirit Guide off the table to make it easier to answer the Lurrus that's going to come later. That's kind of awkward, though. Because my opponent can then just, like, play Lurrus off of the 3 lands on the left and then play Safekeeper with the stuff on the right. But if they're doing that, then that's one turn where they don't get the bridge out of the way. That's just super awkward for me. Three, 4, 5, 6, so I don't want to play this land. I draw another land, I'm fine with playing the mountain. That's awkward. Now they get to know that the coast is clear for Lurrus. Alright, we've probably lost this one now. Lurrus comes down, gets Sylvan Safekeeper to protect it. Then the next turn, Seal of Primordium happens, getting rid of my Ensnaring Bridge. I need a good rip in this turn cycle. And Sylvan Safekeeper does a good job of stopping a lot of my best outs. One, two, three, four, five, six. So again, to play toward... I should take 1 damage to play towards being able to cast a Chandra. It is a great out to board that I need to play towards. That is quite good. Kind of. As long as a Seal of Primordium isn't in play, I can play that on 2 to stop the Seal forever. So we're just going to pass the turn here. And hope that opponent goes Seal, destroy bridge, and doesn't play around this. Fuck. Yeah, so the question is, are they going to play correctly? And I think the answer is no, because opponent has already made a mistake, although it's one that I didn't talk about. In my opinion, on the previous turn cycle, opponent should have used Seal of Primordium to blow up a Mox and then Ghost Quarter my City of Traders, and that takes me off the out of Chandra Awaken Inferno Mattering. One, two, three, four. Okay, so this will ultimately end up getting me another Ensnaring Bridge. So I go 4 mana Karn. Next turn. Oh, fuck this. That's a problem. This is not as good as I thought. Okay. So let's start with the obvious play then. Of stopping the seals from blowing up everything that I know and love. Now instead they just get like an extra card off of Bobble each turn. Alright, need to rip bridge now? Otherwise I just die to a 2020? Yeah, so I'm just dead to the 2020. I'm going to go ahead and concede here. We got bodied by this Thoughtseize. If not for that Thoughtseize, we would have lost one bridge to Seal and then Sudden Shocked Lurrus and been totally okay that game. But that Thoughtseize clearing the way for Lurrus was really brutal. So, Eddie, if we jam the Chalice on 2, then the Chalice on 2 just gets blown up, and all it does is, like, literally buy me one turn to find Chandra Awakened Inferno. And then that answers the board, but I'll be left with basically nothing. And, like, if 2 turns go by without me finding that, then I think I'm in an unwinnable position. Whereas the line that I took allows my opponent to make a mistake and then put me in a much better position. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that you're wrong. Okay, we're playing against a non-companion deck. And I have a turn 1 Chalice on 1. And then a removal spell for something. No results for my opponent. I'm going to keep this hand. My hand isn't really good. And it's like so awkward if like I lead on Chalice in 1 and my opponent just goes like City of Phasers and was 1 for 2 or something like that. Like almost all the blue decks right now are companion decks. But there's also things like Reanimator to be thinking about, in which case Chalice in 1 is totally fine. Dredge is another thing that could commonly... Oh, it is a blue deck. Alright, so we're playing against like a Rogue Delver style deck. So I don't like that we've given up a land to try and get rid of this Delver. Gaza, I actually think Red Prison was way better than people gave it credit for in the Oko metagame. So, for example, I switched to playing 4x Pyroblasts in my Red Prison decks, and against Delver, oh, that's fucking brutal. And against Delver, I was just sideboarding out my Chalices and boarding in 4 Blasts so that I never lost to Oko. Well, not never, but so that my chances of losing to Oko decreased frequently. I think the Goblins are actually pretty darn bad right now because of Lurrus. So, like, Lurrus is in almost every deck, and, like, the Goblins attacking into Lurrus just, like, means that your opponent has free lifelink every turn. I like the Goblin, like, the 8 Goblin builds in metagames where combo is more prevalent, because you just want to get your opponent dead, right? You just want to play a lock piece and then kill your opponent as quickly as possible. So my opponent is pausing here with 1 card in hand. If it's Arcanist or Pyromancer, they 100% just jam it. So what could they be thinking about playing? Brainstorm, I guess? Yikes. Good thing we have a companion for when we flood out. Wait. Fuck. Oh, great. Grim Monolith is here. Grim Monolith, I will totally respect you if we draw Big Chandra next turn. Just saying. This Monolith also does make it like considerably more likely that any spell that I have does resolve. Rough. The land choice is the default Magic Online mountain, which I do think is a respectable mountain. But, alright, Scumbag Delver just won't flip. But sooner or later, I am going to like actually just sell all of my default lands. And, like, only have the Plains and Mountain Arts that I like. Where's my fireball? Okay. That's pretty annoying for me. And that my opponent now gets 3 redraws towards counter magic if I cast a spell. Eight mana. Do I cast Chalice of the Void? If I cast Chalice of the Void and they draw a non-Delver creature or draw a standstill, it's actually quite bad for me, and I should just save this Chalice for a turn where I can cast 2 spells. So basically, I care about them drawing Brazen Borrower, Young Pyromancer, Dreadhorde Arcanist, True Name Nemesis, something of that nature. Otherwise, Chalice of the Void probably shuts off close to their entire deck. I think I'm going to pass here and try to do 2 plays that matter in 1 turn. No, if I cast the Chalice of the Void, it's going on 1 to stop cantrips. Alright, Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce is basically a blank. It's a blue card that pitches to Force of Will. So the awkward thing about like not going for the Chalice last turn is that now my opponent has 5 mana available for hardcast Force of Will for future turns, assuming that like they're not tapping their mana for anything. This is worth doing now. So with 9 mana available, I can go Chalice on 1, it resolves. My opponent maybe Spell Pierces, but probably doesn't. And then I can follow up with Chalice on 2, so I can't get standstilled afterwards. And it only takes 8 mana to do everything that I want to do. This line is rough if my opponent Brazen Borrowers. Alright, force pitching the Spell Pierce. Okay, that's fine. So now we'll use the second Chalice of the Void on 1. Sure. Okay, now we need to rip something that answers the Delver. We have Stifle answered as far as like Planeswalker abilities go. Nope. We have not drawn a threat this game at all. That's not good, since our opponent drew Mishra's Factory, but like we're playing it. There's some really interesting high EV plays where we plus the Chandra instead of minusing here, because hitting bridge is so insane, but we're not going to take those because I'd like die if they don't work. So we get 2 turns to answer or stop this card. My Planeswalker dies here, so I'll be looking for another card off the top. Oh, nope, they are going for me and giving me another look at Ensnaring Bridge off my Planeswalker. Don't know about that one. Yeah, so do you have, like, Force plus blue card? So my opponent appears to be F6'd, so that's just a Mycosynth Lattice win, rather than, like, having to Ensnaring Bridge. Cool. So now my opponent doesn't get to do anything, and I win. I liked the part where I won that game. Woo. Chat, be honest. Who had faith in me that game? The answer was nobody. I didn't even have faith in me that time. Okay. So we're playing against blue-red Standstill Delver, I guess. We saw Wastelands and Manlands. We saw Delvers. We saw Force of Wills. We saw Stifles. Yes, Delver on the other side of the battlefield. Definitely the real MVP. I like this. So many things are going to be awkward in this matchup because they're going to be great against like the Delver side of the deck and bad against the Standstill side of the deck. So Sorcerer's Spyglass is a great example of that, where it will stop Mishra's Factory, but like if you get that versus a Delver draw, it's just an embarrassment. I don't know, like opponent gets to be salty, right? Like both of us had terrible luck that game. Like my opponent flooded and didn't flip that Delver, and I flooded and didn't draw a threat until like turn 12 or whatever that was. So like we both had pretty terrible draws. So I'm going to be on the draw against, like, big air quotes Delver. And usually on the draw versus Delver, I cut Trinispheres. So that's going to be my starting point versus this deck, is cutting those. Karn the Great Creator is something that I also frequently trim versus Delver. Like, it's slow and awkward, but against the standstill side of this deck, it's actually very good, because it gets me Sorcerer Spyglass and Liquid Metal Coating, which will be good against the manlands. So normally versus more traditional Delver, I just like bring in the other bridge. But I'm not sure here. I think I'm still going to bring in the bridge and trim one Karn and leave the Karn as another threat. Like, I'll still have access to it, and I'll still have a removal spell and something that, and like multiple different things that attack their mana base. Yes. Awkwardly, we're going to deal a lot of damage to ourself this game. I will be hoping to draw another mountain, A, to cast the Chandra, B, so that I can cast 2-drop spells without hurting myself. Wasteland will be the best card that they could have against me in this matchup, I think. Or not in this matchup, with his opening hand. I guess the other thing I could have thought about is trimming some Blood Moons. I kind of like the Blood Moons, though, because they, like, keep my Ancient Tombs from hurting me too much. Expect this to, like, eat a Spell Pierce or equivalent. It resolved. I'm not gonna take a lot of stock in the fact that it resolved, though. Like, that could just mean that my opponent has an Abrade to answer it. Like, I don't know that the Delver player keeps a hand that just folds to a Chalice. Oh man, cast a Standstill. I would be so down with that. Okay. There's my answer to whether or not I want to be playing Karn. No. No is the answer. Most, but not all, of my Karn targets are going to suck. Pawn is not F6'd. The hand's super awkward. I don't just want to play Bone Crusher as a threat, because it's my removal spell for their first creature. At the same time, I don't just want to jam Chandra as the first thing that's hitting the board. Maybe the Bone Crusher is fine, given that I have a Chalice in play to help protect it. I'm not in love with this play. I need to be getting things out of my hand in case my opponent has True Name Nemesis. So I can't just, like, not cast anything in that turn cycle. Okay, now that I have this, it's 100% time to just go for one of these. Awkward. So I just need to hit land drops. If I hit land drops for the rest of the game, I'm pretty golden. I will probably lose the game to another Force of Will. No, I'm not racing. I'm winning this game by turtling. If I turn Bone Crusher Giant sideways, I get hit for 2 more points of damage. I think I'm supposed to do this. And play a redundant one of these so I can't get burnt out after an Abrade. So the goal here is to resolve Ensnaring Bridge next turn. I'm going to take 3 this turn, going to 6. And then I plus this for mana, cast Ensnaring Bridge, still being at 6 with 1 card. Maybe 2 cards in hand if I don't draw a land. It's unclear whether or not opponent will go for this. Or just me directly. I think they're supposed to just try and race me. Yeah, did you not realize that you shut off your own ability here? Well, I'm blocking. Like, I'll take this trade. Nice. So we can play around soft permission like Daze. We can't beat Force here. Nice. Wow, all right. That seems like an early concession to me. Like, opponent can rip an Abrade or anything that answers Bridge, and I'm in a lot of trouble. But we'll take that. Opponent's deck was interesting. I wonder if that was a hybrid deck that wasn't good enough at doing any one thing. Like, I wonder how focused it was. My hand's interesting. So I have a potential turn 1 and turn 2 play off of the stuff that I have. My opponent is not a companion deck. So that's a piece of information that I have. Let's keep it. I think this one's borderline. Waterlogged Grove is the turn 1 play. We could be playing against a lands variant. Like, there's plenty of, like, blue-green lands decks running around. In which case, now that I drew that Spirit Guide, I should just, like, YOLO Blood Moon them. I'm going to pitch 1 Blood Moon and cast the second. The reason that I'm not pitching the Abrade is that if I am indeed playing against a lands deck, and I stick this Blood Moon right now, then drawing a Mox... Ooh, wow. Alright, I'm wrong. I'm going to finish my thought. Then drawing a Mox is one of the best ways for them to stay in this game. So now I'm not exactly sure what my opponent is playing. Is it just Rug Delver with a Waterlogged Grove in flex slots? If this is just Rug Delver and my opponent just like plays Tarmogoyf or True Name here, I'm in a lot of trouble. I'm not beating that with my current hand. Or Oko. Let's lose my own Trinosphere. I'll go out on my terms. Am I abrading the food or just playing another Trinosphere out? I think I'm abrading the food. The goal now is to stay alive long enough to resolve a Karn, get a Sorcerous Spyglass. No, I don't think I can afford to miss land drops. I have Chandra Awakened Inferno as something that I should be playing towards. And I have a lot of lines involving Karn that want me to have 6 or more mana in a turn, so I think I need to keep making my land drops. Playing this Grim Monolith out is kind of awkward. There's worlds where my opponent steals it so they can double spell in a turn and they just give me a food instead. Alright, 7 mana available. Alright, I'm going to take a high upside play that has a significant downside. We're going to tap like this so that when I plus Chandra, I have 3 mana available, and some of it is red, so that I can Chandra plus and still do something with it. This line super sucks if they have a counterspell, because it means that I've wasted my Grim Monolith mana. But, like, Chandra minus on the food means that, like, it just dies to the other food next turn. So I really need to plus this and hit something reasonable that requires my opponent to Oko it. Hey JD, welcome. I mean, we were mostly locked out of it once Oko came down early. That is probably the single card that is best against this archetype. Alright, big money. Ancient Tomb, huh? We are now going to just get a Chrome Mox out of my hand. There's worlds involving, like, Karn shutting off Oko and then me getting Ensnaring Bridge, where this card not being in my hand matters. We're dead in 2 turns to the food. And the Oko has eliminated a lot of my outs. I wish our opponent showed us more cards this game, but they just, like, single-handedly beat us with an Oko instead. Oh, thank you. They discarded a Delver and showed me that at the last minute. That's very good to know. Okay, so normally when I'm playing this deck in a metagame full of Oko, I have 4 Pyroblasts, and my game plan is board out Chalice of the Voids, board in Pyroblasts. But I don't know that I'm going to get the luxury of doing that with this deck configuration. So I'm probably not going to want my transfers, and I'm probably not going to want to be playing the full set of Karns. I probably want to play Sudden Shock as removal, but it's not going to kill everything. So, like, against Termidoid, for example, it's not going to kill it. So, like, these are cards that I would be thinking about. And, like, Sorcerer's Spyglass is also interesting. So, as far as sideboarding goes, I have to decide what I'm going to do regarding my Pyroblasts, because I need to have them, but having them alongside Chalice is super awkward, because I want to aggressively cast Chalice in the early game, and if it sticks, then my Pyroblast out to Oko is off. Oh, thanks for the update, Dr. Bell. You know, I was expecting that in the middle of the day today, if we are going to get that, but like better late than never. It's happy news. Everyone's in danger. So if I don't want to play Karns because they don't impact the board, I could board like this, which gives me 5 extra removal spells, 4 answers to Oko, 1 more Ensnaring Bridge. It's awkward to deal with Oko and Delvers in the same game because they require totally different answers. So I have a little bit of non-bows here in terms of my deck building. This is a easy mulligan. I have all the removal in the world, but I don't actually get to do anything with my mana. This one will be a keep. How to play out the hand is interesting. So my opponent has mulliganed. I'm going to keep this. I'm actually going to pitch my Planeswalker with this hand. So I am looking to cheese the win this game. And I'm going to cast Blood Moon on turn 1, and then I'm going to cast Blood Moon on turn 2. And we're going to hope that one of those resolves and wins me the game. So the mulligan decision is actually really interesting because I have to show them a card off of the Chrome Mox. And so I've shown them something that they didn't necessarily know was going to be in the deck. But I think putting the Planeswalker back into my deck for removal later on potentially matters. On the off chance that I somehow like shuffle or search my library. Okay. So this is the card we have to beat this game. We boarded in a decent amount of extra removal. Let's see if we can do it. Well, you didn't have a counterspell last turn. Do you have it now? You do not. So we'll kill the Delver. Our Planeswalker might just die to Lightning Bolt. That's something our opponent can still cast. If it does, cool. If it doesn't, cooler. Nice. I think we're just going to ship back like I have here. It's possible that on the draw I should have the Seasoned Pyromancer as something that can just like jump in front of a Tarmogoyf and then like create some blockers later on. I'm going to keep this hand. It says turn 1 removal for a Delver, turn 2 removal for another threat, or play Monolith. If Monolith resolves, I have turn 3 Planeswalker, which can sweep things like Mongoose. So this is a very different hand from the last one, but one that's quite good. It's also one where I can potentially like slow roll the hand if I need to. It's also a hand where if my opponent mulls into Oblivion to try to like beat a turn 1 lock piece, and I don't actually have that. Like, they just have the wrong set of tools. It is my intention to save this Pyroblast for Oko. There are things that could make me change my mind. But I probably wouldn't Pyroblast like a Delver or a Brainstorm or anything like that at this point. This is the game that I lose to Tarmogoyf. I currently have no way of beating a Tarmogoyf. By the time this comes around, even if I minus X, I, would be looking at either 5 or 6 to probably kill a Tarmogoyf. And then that leaves my big bad threat as dying to a Lightning Bolt when I won't have given my opponent anything else to bolt this game. Oh yeah, I still think I jam Monolith on 2 if my opponent doesn't make a turn 2 play. Ooh. No land, eh? Well, that makes me considerably less scared of Oko. In that case, if I'm not going to have to deal with Oko anytime soon, let's start chipping away at the counterspells that are probably in my opponent's hand. No. Okay, they found a land. Unfortunately for you, I have a friend. She is angry, and she costs a lot of mana. I don't know, if they have daze, don't they, like, daze my Monolith? Okay, so I can -5 and kill this, which puts this awkwardly at 3 loyalty. I can instead stomp. Stomp deals 2 damage, and then I can -3 Chandra. And that leaves my Planeswalker out of bolt range. I'm not planning on playing the other side of this turn. Like, if this resolves, all I want to do is cast Sorcerous Spyglass on Oko. So now I want to kill this prior to casting Sorcerous Spyglass, I think. Because if I cast Sorcerous Spyglass and it gets countered and goes to the graveyard, then I have to use one more point of loyalty on the Tarmogoyf. Now I'm going to look at the Lightning Bolt that's in their hand and be sad when my Planeswalker dies. Got him! They did not have Lightning Bolt. Alright, they get to Brainstorm to find it, though. Oh, they do not have it. So now we're getting to the point where even if my opponent does draw like a Tarmogoyf or a True Name Nemesis, the emblem probably just outraces them. Alright, good stuff. Alright, so at this point we have cashed the league, and we're now looking to see if we can come out a little bit ahead. I'm going to go ahead and just take a second to refill my water. I will be right back in about a minute. What was the loss to? Bad top decks. Sure. Sounds about right. Oh wow, Fine and Andy, thank you very much for all of that support. Oh, randomly gifting a sub to 3 regulars here. Or no, I mean, that wasn't random, that was probably chosen. Unclear. But either way, thank you very much. You know, all 3 of those people have been around off and on. Alright, let's get this updated here. 7. And was that Ultra Pro? Yeah, Ultra Pro, thank you very much for following. I hope you are enjoying the content. We're going to keep this hand against Soul Nox. The Chalice isn't necessarily the big prize winner here against a lot of the decks that Soul Nox plays. The prize is the early Karn. I think I'm still supposed to cast the Karn here. It's tempting to just cast Ensnaring Bridge this turn. And if I spike a mana source, well, I guess if I spike a land, because it can't be a Mox, I go for early Chandra. I'm going to go for the turn 2 Planeswalker. And attempt to just lock my opponent out of this game in terms of mana. And then this can be my backup plan, protected by Bridge, if this stuff doesn't work. But I just have, like, no idea what exactly my opponent is playing at this point. Rude! Rude! I'm gonna give my opponent a frowny face. That's so good! Hello, EDH1 of. Yup. So I think this is the way that I'm going to go about this. I think I'm just going to minus this and take another bridge out of it. And then say, like, Karn, you're not particularly good anymore. I'm done with you. Rather than just try to fight a battle over keeping the Karn alive, where first I throw away Liquid Metal Coating, and then I'm like plussing Bridge and making it so that my opponent's creature removal can get rid of the bridges. Of course it's an EDH deck. Look, they've played 6 cards with different names. My opponent called their deck an EDH deck because they're playing a Yorion deck. Ho ho ho! Ho ho! Oh, hold up. That's an 88? He is legit playing a 100 card deck. Okay. Wow. We're gonna kill the Fiend Artisan. I don't know what it does, like, specifically, in this situation. My opponent has returned the frowny face. That is fair. Okay, so now I don't want to play out the second bridge. Do we give him the old Chalice on 2? I feel like we give him the old Chalice on 2. Shuts off this, but otherwise it just shuts off Stomp. Life total's getting a little precious from like just Collector Oof hitting us. We have that covered in multiple different ways though, so I'm not like super worried. Alright, so I play that. So Chandra's -3 doesn't kill Yorion, but that doesn't super matter because the Ensnaring Bridge beats it. So I just need to answer the Oof, so the Oof doesn't attack me. I can alternatively play Ensnaring Bridge and one other card. The Blast Zone is interesting. Because the Blast Zone threatens to kill my Ensnaring Bridge. So long term, I feel like I'm going to lose to end step destroy, like end step Yorion beating me. All right, so we kill that for now. Oh, well, that does it too. All right, so we are playing against 100 card Yorion pile. Trinisphere and Chalice seem bad. Let's see if we can cobble together 7 cards to bring in. It's questionable that we actually can. Ooh. So Chandra plus Sudden Shocks, that's 3. I guess I would Pyroblast their commander. I would gladly play another copy of Bridge. Okay, yeah, so it looks like we can actually do this. And then we board in, like, Spyglass or Ballista, either as early removal or as something we just proactively play out and put on to stop Fiend Artisan. Or something. Like, we've seen such a small amount of my opponent's deck that I don't know actually what I should be doing in order to beat them, specifically. But lock pieces out and just ram my good stuff against their stuff seems fine. And then after we see some more cards, we'll potentially adjust our strategy a little bit. This is a very fast ensnaring bridge, but then we have nothing. I'm gonna try to find something a little more consistent. Turn 1 Blood Moon. Okay. Let's keep this and junk the Pyroblast. We won't show that this game. My opponent showed me a decent number of basic lands, so like I don't necessarily think this is going to be game over. I also don't get to turn 2 Karn since I turned this into a mountain. Nice mountain. Okay, that is real good against Blood Moon start. If my opponent has Force of Vigor in their EDH deck, I'm in trouble. I've gotten a little unlucky. Ooh. Sorry, friend. It's nothing personal. Ooh. Opponent does have counter magic. That's okay. We now have Ensnaring Bridge to hide behind. Opponent gets a decent amount of filtering each turn to look for Abrupt Decay, though. Do I kill Dryad Arbor? Is Dryad Arbor good enough to kill? I feel like no. But I take 2 damage this turn if I don't kill it. And every point of life might end up being relevant this game. I don't need to kill the Veteran Explorer for lands. Ooh, Field of the Dead is in there too. The Field of the Dead is interesting because they have like both. They have 2 snow-covered swamps instead of something like Swamp Snow-Covered Swamp. So I guess that means I have Astrolabe too as something to bounce with Yorion. 3, 4, 5. Can't cast it yet. So I'll take 1 this turn. That's fine. Always yield to that. Multiple Fields of the Dead as well. Note that I tapped wrong. I should have tapped one of the Chrome Moxen in case my opponent plays Collector Oof followed by a blue spell so that I can actually Pyroblast it. It's such a fringe situation that it probably doesn't matter, but like, I made an error. So do I just kill both veteran explorers here? I don't think so. Like, I +2, and that's the amount that the veteran explorers are attacking for. My opponent is at 6 after all of their Sylvan Library takes. And I can also just, like, Pyroblast literally anything to get Hellbent next turn. Alright, my opponent has just attacked me. I'm just trying to get Hellbent here. Nice. What a stack. Does it have a sorcery speed restriction? It does. So I can cast Karn, Great Creator. No, the Walking Ballista is not in there. I boarded that in. This isn't an elemental. So my opponent is dead. Anyway. Nope, nope. So let's wipe the board here. Oh, that still triggers? If it would... Oh, nope. Does this math out that I can just get Lattice now and kill my opponent this turn? I hope it does. Seven, 8, 9, 10. Fair. I mixed up my abilities. I forgot which one exiled. I don't think the mistake matters. I also guess I should have cast the Karn prior to doing my minus. So that was a little sloppy from me. I respect it. So Pyroblast's definitely good. I think I'm still of the opinion that Chalice is awkward and Trinisphere is awkward, so I think I'm going to run back my same configuration. I don't know that we're necessarily going to run into the same. I was saying something and then I got distracted. Sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. I'm going to keep this hand. It produces a turn 2 Karn, and maybe abrades something on turn 1 if I draw a red card that matters. Did we actually see any white cards, or did we just see Caracas as something that could, like, cast Yorion and bounce it? So if I imprint, I can cast Monolith on 1. That's fine. I can also just cast the Ensnaring Bridge this turn, which I don't hate. It helps set up Karn better. It means that I can't just, like, jam a Chandra down my opponent's throat if I draw it, and I'm less likely to just get the Mycosynth Lattice free roll win. But that's okay. Very happy with that draw. Yep, okay. I mean, I was expecting counter magic from my opponent, given that they hadn't made an early play at all. So that'll be a Collect Roof. No, I don't get to untap my Monolith. I'm fine with taking a little bit of damage. Nice. I don't even know that I should play that City of Traders. But it lets me make that play while still holding up Pyroblast. I mean, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and leave open the blast. Guess who's back? Back again. Chandra's back. Stack up emblems for a whole bunch of turns until your opponent slowly bleeds a death of 1,000 cuts. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. last line was a little forced. Okay, so we ended up with a 3-2 last time around when we played. Let me get everything on screen and then let's talk about it. Sorry. Okay, so last time around we ended up with a 3-2, and this time around we ended up with a 4-1. Last time our 3-2 really felt like a 4-1, and this time around the deck felt pretty good. Very happy with most of the stuff here. Card that I'm least happy with in the 75 is Seasoned Pyromancer. I think I boarded it out every single round, or very close to it. Card I'm most impressed with is obviously my girl here. Most of the stuff that I have access to feels pretty good, and I like a lot of the numbers. I think it's time to just cut this card. I've been very unhappy with it multiple leagues in a row. I know some people are like super hyped up on this card as a way to just like grind value through the Luris decks, but it's awkward with Bridge, and it's really awkward with this because like you want to be saving this in your hand, and if you look at this, you discard 2 and then draw 2, and it's not an optional effect. Like you have to do it. So it's really awkward to try and curve out with this in some cases. I think I just want to cut this for another piece of removal in the main deck. Like, I would be fine with promoting a Sudden Shock to the main deck, for example, or playing, like, 1 Fiery Confluence. Yes, strictly speaking, I probably should either be playing all Snow Mountains for bluff reasons, or should be playing a mix of them. I downloaded this deck list and changed 1 card in the sideboard. I put in a Ensnaring Bridge in the sideboard, where the original pilot had a 2nd Seasoned Pyromancer. Would rather fight Luris with Hazoret. So I have 12 endgame I have 11 endgame finishers in this deck list already. I don't know that I need to add a Hazoret when even the Delver decks are playing Caracas a lot of the time. I don't think that's a wise way to fight the format. So I think a third Braid main deck is reasonable. I think a Fiery Confluence main deck is reasonable. A Sudden Shock is reasonable. Magus of the Moon and the Goblins don't really work when like this is the primary game plan. 20th Land is also probably reasonable. Any predictions for the banned and restricted update next week? Yes. They're going to ban cards. Maybe lots of them. Seriously, though, I think, like, Luris has got to go. That's super obvious, right? And so the question beyond that is, how much more do you get rid of? So do you take out Zerda with this? Do you leave... I don't think you can leave Luris and just cut Bobble, right? Because you would have to ban both Bobbles, otherwise you just like switch to playing the other one, and like Luris would still be absurd even without Bobble. So I think Luris pretty clearly goes. The question is like, do you take Zerda out as well because like it's the low-hanging fruit of the thing that would be best afterwards? Or do you like go nuclear and just get rid of the entire mechanic? So like that's a real question. The other question is, do you get rid of anything else that was a problem previously? So like Oko was a huge problem in the format prior to companions hitting, and the companions just like completely overshadowed Oko and pushed Oko into a reasonable place. But if the companions as a whole get nuked, then we just go back to the same metagame that we had before that was pretty miserable. So I think the most likely scenario is Luris is banned, no other changes. I think the second most likely scenario is either the companion mechanic is nuked for Legacy Vintage in some capacity or other, or they just get rid of the companions that are currently problematic. And I think the third option is that you go nuclear and you just ban like 5 or 6 cards. Just like nuke a whole bunch of things that are problematic and give us a reset. I'm not gonna lie to you. I enjoy the post-Ikoria metagame more than I do the Oko Mush metagame that was prior to it by a considerable amount. Like, I think the games now are more interesting, and I think the deck building now is more interesting than in Oko Mush time. I know things are kind of like Luris Mush right now instead, but I think the degree of deck building differences is like way, way higher. And while Luris snowballs games out of control very quickly, if you don't answer it, it's at least fightable on a number of different levels. Whereas Oko is a lot harder to fight for non-Pyroblast decks, and like Oko on its own totally invalidates so many archetypes. If I'm wearing the judge hat and I get to make the decision, what I personally do would be ban Oko, Zerda, Luris, and move on from there. I think Astrolabe is less of a problem without Oko around, and I never really thought that Veil of Summer was a ban-worthy card by Legacy standards anyway. But keep in mind that I'm not someone who is affected by Veil much. Almost all of the decks that I tend to play are not impacted by Veil at all. Like, I don't tend to try to win counterspell wars with most of the decks that I play, so I don't care about Veil in that capacity. And like, I'm not playing a Thoughtseize deck most of the time where like I try to Thoughtseize and then my opponent gains a card instead of me taking one. Yeah, so that's what I'd do. We'll see whether or not. Well, we know Wizards is doing something now, and I'm very happy with that. I'm not gonna lie, I had quite a sense of dread when I realized that. Well, when I thought I realized that like we were going to have at least 2 more weeks of all of this nonsense before we got a change. I mean, what would happen if they just ban nothing and say this is the new mechanic, live with it? I'd do what I've been doing, which is play Legacy. I don't know how much we're going to talk about this on the podcast now, so I'll say a few words briefly. But I think focusing too much on ban discussion is bad. And so, like, I try to do it between rounds and stuff, but, like, you'll notice that, like, I'm never writing articles about, like, ban this thing or anything like that. I think if you're focusing too much on the format needs to change, you're not engaging enough with the format as it is, and you're not, like, trying to power your way through the format. You're not trying to figure out how to attack it, and you're also spending a lot of mental energy in a way that's not actually overly beneficial, right? So, like, take Top Miracles, for example. In that metagame, where a lot of people consider Miracles a little bit oppressive, I enjoyed the hell out of that format because I was going and, like, doing things like sticking Sword of War and Peace on Mirror Crusaders, and I was just killing Miracles players in a single turn. And so, like, I could compete with them in a grindy long game off of Ether Vial, and I also had a quick I win button that was really hard for them to deal with. And my win percentage in that era was fine. Similarly, in the Deathrite Shaman era, my win percentage was okay. I think I was sitting in the low to mid 60s for most of the Deathrite Shaman era, just like playing taxes and adjusting my builds every week. And I did okay. Would I have been better switching decks? Yeah. But I found a way through. And that's usually going to be the case. So I think it's fine to spend some time talking about bans from time to time. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of people get sucked into really bad places by focusing too much on card bannings. So, for example, one of the regulars of the channel, Lomer Boy, Connor False, often gets really bogged down when the metagame gets really rough. And a lot of times he's pretty vocal about it, and he gets really frustrated by some things and really wants changes. And I feel like he ends up in a bad place mentally a lot of times because of that. Or you have people like Bob Huang, who I love his content. I listen to all of it, read all of it. But I feel like almost everything Bob says these days now is like, this card should be banned, this card should be banned, this card should be banned. And it starts to get a little repetitive, right? And so I'm way more interested in hearing what Bob has to say about attacking the current metagame than I am in listening to his thoughts on what should be banned. Kind of food for thought, right? Like, again, I love his content. Listen to every episode of his podcast. Talk to him frequently when I need advice or he needs advice about metagames. But just like throwing it out there, I think focusing too much on bans puts the community as a whole in a worse place. All right, I'm going to read this one aloud. I understand that part of my disinterest in the format is that the decks I enjoy aren't good, but it's also hard to want to try playing something else in the current metagame, so I don't just play. Yeah. So, from a content producer's standpoint, I found the current metagame pretty interesting. So, most of the streams that I've played since Companions were printed were exploring a new deck list that I've never played before. And I think that's really neat, right? So there was Luris Taxes, Luris White Weenie, Red Prison with extra mana ramp, Karuga with 8 Spirit Guides, Search Stompy Eldrazi, Search Stompy with Luris. There was, I think we played a Delver deck on stream once. I think we played Loam on stream once that had something spicy in it. Like, I feel like I have played a great variety of decks during this time. And pretty much all of them that had companions felt like they were competitive. Even the crazy cat one that we played. Like, didn't we end up, like, 3-2ing with that deck list or something like that? Like, I think we broke even by playing that deck. Yeah, fine and Andy, I have a similar opinion. So I believe that right now the gameplay is very interesting, but the deck building is fucked. Skeptimus, to be fair, didn't White Weenie win a challenge? So the thing that won the challenge was like the Isamaru, Gideon, like true White Weenie aggro deck, and it's not like a control deck like Death and Taxes is. So like, it's kind of a semantic thing, but I think they're very different archetypes. So Death and Taxes at its core is a control deck, and that deck at its core is an aggro deck. Yeah. And just kind of on that note, I think the deck building in this time period has been some of the most interesting deck building that I've ever seen in Legacy. I think it's really easy to get caught up in like, yeah, just jam whatever you want and play Lurrus as your commander, and then everything's fine. But in terms of the nuances of deck building, I think there's a lot of really cool things that have been going on, and people are realizing like the cool things that you can do with Bauble. Ominous Seas the other day when my opponent made an 8/8 Kraken. Standstill recursion via Lurrus was pretty cool when I played against that. Like the first time I saw like Yorion Interplay, draw 5 cards, like that was super cool. So I think there's been a lot of cool things. Like people trying out various meddling mage decks when you get to know at least one card that your opponent is playing ahead of time. I'm glad that this time period is coming to an end, but I'm super glad that it occurred, and I enjoyed it a lot. Yadaro Standstill, is that the cycling turtle? Because like I laughed out loud when I saw that. Yeah. So I don't want to harp on too long about bans, but you know that's kind of my thoughts to cap off the stream. Anyway, I hope you all have enjoyed this. I have 3 decks in the queue right now. I have an Umori deck list. I have the Enchantress deck list that I was going to play tonight. And Jerry, you just missed about 10 minutes of thoughts on it. So when I'm done here, if you want to listen to about the last 10 minutes of the video, you'll hear a bunch of my thoughts on that. Okay, so I have the Umori deck list, I have the Enchantress deck list, and then I have an Otter deck list to play. So I might try to squeeze in one extra stream this week, in fear that like the entire companion thing gets nuked in the next week. We'll see. But for sure, I will be back on Thursday with Enchantress. Anyway, folks, I hope you have enjoyed. Normally, this is where I ask for, if you're enjoying the channel, please consider doing a donation deck list. But I'm actually going to ask that you hold off on donation deck lists until we see what's going on next Monday as far as changes go. Yes, so my queue takes me up to the ban announcement. So, you know, bad for business, but please don't do donation deck lists that include companions in the next couple of days. I will gladly start taking those again after Monday, but I would really hate for someone to send me a donation and then, like, their deck list isn't valid anymore. So please wait a couple days if you want to make a donation to the channel. Otherwise, if you're enjoying the content, please consider following. Probably going to have an awesome episode of Eternal Glory. We're recording tomorrow, and we'll see what people want to talk about now. We haven't done our show notes yet, and we got a major mix-up in the last hour or so, so we'll see how things go. I'm going to go ahead and turn you over to Caleb. I don't know what he's playing, but hopefully it's going to be fun. Have a great rest of the night, everyone. /raid Caleb DMTG.